And of course, this one promises to be a lot of fun while you learn. So before we begin, we're going to invite the presence of our Lord in our midst. At this time, I will be asking Shoshana Melbourne to read the word of prayer for us.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Davis. Let us pray. Most kind and compassionate Father, we want to thank you for sparing our lives to see yet another day. Thank you, Father, for another opportunity for us to meet as nation builders, persons who have a great desire to serve you and to serve those whom you love, your children. Lord, as we're about to begin another training session, we ask that you open our minds, that you help us to not only listen to what is being said, but that we apply everything that is shared with us and that we too are able to educate others as we come in contact with them. Thank you for hearing and answering our prayers. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Shoshana. Of course, we cannot do anything without the word. At this time, I'm going to introduce to you our presenter for this afternoon, Miss Monique Hutchinson. She is 31 years old, and she is a graduate of the Northern Caribbean University, where she received a Bachelor of Science in Counseling. She started at then office of the Children's Registry as an intern, and she is now a senior registration officer at the now Child Protection Family Service Agency. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our presenter for this afternoon, Miss Monique Hutchinson.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I just need to know that everyone is hearing me clearly.
Yes, we are.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'm going to ask for permission to share my screen. Hold on a second. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, I am, but you need to put it on slideshow.
I'm trying to do that. All right, so let me go again. You have to forgive me, I'm not sure how to put it on slideshow from this end. All right, so share. All right, it's on slideshow, right?
Yes, it is.
All right. So as was said, my name is Monique Hutchinson. I am one of the senior registration officers at the National Children's Registry, a unit under the Child Protection and Family Services Agency. All right. So today we'll be discussing child abuse and the reporting requirements under the Child Care and Protection Act. Now, any questions you have as I go through, feel free to ask them as we go along. All right. All right, so the objectives of this consultation is to, one, create a better understanding of the rules and the functions of the NCR, the National Children's Registry. Also to sensitize you guys, the prescribed persons, about your roles and responsibilities under the Child Care and Protection Act, and to clarify any misconceptions there may be about the child protection system. All right, just an overview of the registry. We were established as a provision of the Child Care and Protection Act. We started in 2007, the 1st of January. At that time, we were the Office of the Children's Registry, right? And the registry's purpose, main purpose, is to serve as a central repository to receive, record, assess, and refer reports of child abuse for investigations, right? So now it was OCR at first, the Office of the Children's Registry. And in 2017, a few years ago, we merged with the then Child Development Agency, and we are now the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, where the NCR is a unit, one of the units under the agency. Now, our role, as I said, one of the roles is to receive reports, information about a child who has been, is being, or is likely to be abandoned or neglected, physically, emotionally, or sexually abused or ill-treated, is otherwise in need of care and protection, or is posing behavioral challenges. The reports are assessed. When we receive the information is then assessed to determine the place of referral and is routed to service partners for investigations and actions to be taken by them, right? Chief among our service partners are another unit in the agency, which is our investigations unit, the Office of the Children's Advocate, OCA, and the police. Now, reports that are sent or referred rather to the Office of the Children's Advocate are those that involve offenders who are prescribed persons, and we'll go into more detail further down as to who a prescribed person is, as well as children who are housed in juvenile detention facilities. Now, in terms of referrals to the police, there are about three branches of the JCF that we refer to. That includes CIB, which is the Criminal Investigations Branch, and reports where a child has died as a result of negligence or abuse. We refer those reports to them. To CTOC, we refer instances where they are suspected trafficking, and CTOC is the counterterrorism and organized crime investigation branch of the JCF, and we refer to the missing persons monitoring unit as well in terms of ANAND alerts or reports where children are reported missing, right? Now, the functions, why do we need the registry? Reporting to the registry facilitates improved confidentiality, quicker response times to children in need of care and protection, increased reporting of child abuse, a centralized source of information and statistics on child abuse and related issues. Now, in terms of improved confidentiality, because we are guided by confidentiality agreements, once we come into employment of the registry specifically, we sign confidentiality agreements where we are not allowed to divulge information in terms of who made the report to us, right? Whereas if you report the matter to anyone outside of the registry, they are not necessarily guided by those type of confidentiality regulations. Quicker response times to children in need of care and protection. In the instance of the registry, we have specific protocols or specific processes that allow for the reports to go out as quickly as possible and to the relevant or the necessary persons. So if it is that you refer to or you make a report to another entity or to someone else, they might end up sending you around the place. But there are times when we get calls or reports where the person would say they have been calling this, that, and the third persons, and they'll send them this place, where as if where if they had come to us in the first place in terms of reporting, we would have processed that information in a timely manner and sent it to the relevant persons for action to be taken, right? Increased reporting of child abuse. If there is the one place that everyone knows that this is where they go to make reports, then everybody's going to report there. And so the amount of abuse reports or children in need of care and protection report that we are going to get. All right, so what is child abuse? Child abuse is any act or failure to act on the part of a parent, a caretaker, or any other person which results in the death, serious physical, emotional, or sexual harm or exploitation of the child. It's also any act or failure to act on the part of the parent or caretaker which presents an imminent risk of serious harm. So it doesn't have to be a case where the child is actually harmed. If the child is put at risk, then that is child abuse. If you fail to act, then that is child abuse. All right, so we have 6 types of abuse that we are going to be looking at. We have physical, sexual, emotional abuse, neglect, child trafficking, and child labor. All right, so physical abuse is any action or actions towards a child that result in or could result in serious physical injury, such as beating, burning, cutting, biting, punching, harmful restraint, or the use of any weapon or instrument, right? Possible signs and effects of physical abuse: the child may present with bruises, fractures, or cuts on the body. The child may be nervous or hyperactive, aggressive, disruptive, and destructive. The child may be overly frightened of a parent or caretaker. The child may be unusually suspicious of physical contact, right? And the signs and effects of physical abuse, sexual abuse, and emotional abuse, they tend to overlap, right? They're not specific to any one type of abuse. Sexual abuse is any sexual behavior to a child, which may include, but is not limited to, fondling of the private area, oral sex, vaginal or anal penetration by a finger, penis, or any other object, exhibitionism, which is the display of the private area for sexual gratification, child pornography, incest, and sexual grooming. Now, possible signs and effects of sexual abuse: the child may have very low self-esteem, poor academic performance. The child may become antisocial or destructive, depressed and or suicidal, and become delinquent. And it sometimes presents in children a change in behavior, especially a drastic change in behavior. You can pick up that there is something that is going on. So you have a child in your class that is usually very quiet, and all of a sudden they're very loud, they're very disruptive, they're aggressive towards other students, or even aggressive towards you. We have a child that was usually outspoken, all of a sudden they're quiet. And so someone who is usually friendly, they get very timid. So there is a change in behavior, and that would sometimes indicate something is happening. We're all following so far?
Yes, we are, Ms. Hutchins.
All right, thank you. Now, emotional abuse. Attitudes or behaviors expressed towards a child that create serious emotional or psychological damage. And as I said, the signs and effects tend to overlap. And as you can see on the slide, it's similar. Well, it's the same types of effects as the sexual, and you can tie in the effects of the physical abuse for this one as well. Right? And in this case as well, children, in terms of abuse, the child being physically, sexually, or emotionally abused, there are times when that child lashes out in terms of inflicting the same type of abuse on someone else. Neglect is any serious disregard for a child's supervision, care, or discipline, right? So it's a supervision, care, or discipline. So failure to provide discipline. The child is misbehaving and no steps were taken to rectify the behavior or address the behavior. That is a form of neglect as well. And possible signs and effects of neglect: the child may be abandoned by a parent, the child may have unattended medical needs, child may not be supervised, the child may be mostly hungry, improperly dressed, has poor hygiene, child may be pale, lacks energy, begs or steals food, and is frequently absent from school. Most of the reports we tend to get from persons in schools are those of neglect. Even if other instances of abuse are happening, neglect is almost always involved. The child comes and the child is not, don't have lunch money, the child is not properly dressed, or they always come to school with the uniform dirty, stuff like that. You, as other than home, we know that children spend majority of their time at school, other than the last 2 years due to the pandemic, but children spend majority of the times at home and at school. So if the home is not noticing what is going on, or if the home is where something is going on, more times than not, the teacher or the guidance counselor or some school official is going to be the one that is going to pick up what is happening. Now, child labor and child trafficking. Child labor is any work that is mentally, physically, socially, or morally dangerous and harmful to children and interferes with their schooling. Now, child labor, we have labor laws out here. We all know that child labor laws, where there are specific ages where the child is allowed to work, or the child should not be working. And if it is that the child is working, I believe it's between ages of, what is it? I think it's 15, at 15 and up. Don't quote me on it, but at a certain age, the child is allowed to work, but it's only light work that they're able to do, right? And the work that they're doing cannot interfere with their schooling. It also cannot be in any type of hazardous work, so they can be on construction sites doing any heavy lifting. Or even if not doing any heavy lifting, they have to be on construction sites. Hazardous type of work, they are not allowed to work certain hours, late hours, right? Child trafficking is the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of a child by means of threat, use of force, abduction, fraud, deception, abuse of power for exploitation. So this is basically one person sending a child or receiving a child for the purpose of either any kind of exploitation, sex, labor, drugs, whatever it is, by use of force or abuse of power, so a parent or someone who is in control of the child. Signs and effects of child labor or trafficking: the child may be frequently on the streets begging, selling, working. There are instances where the children we often see at the stoplights or see selling the little boxes of chocolate or begging on the street. They do that and then they have a situation that they go back to where they have to present their earnings for the day and such. Those are instances of child labor. The child might be missing from home or school, and the child may not get to live out their childhood, so they are forced into adulthood. All right, so we're going to go through an overview of reporting to the registry, right? So the NCR, that is the NCR, and UNICEF commissioned a knowledge, attitudes, and practices survey to check reporting patterns. The persons they surveyed were children between the ages of 10 and 17, institutional professionals, and the general public 18 and over. Institutional professionals, those in schools and such. Now, according to the survey, all professionals that were surveyed, they were aware of the forms of abuse, right? The children, 97% of them and 95% of adults were aware. So majority of the persons surveyed were aware of the different forms of abuse. Now, in terms of experiencing the abuse, either firsthand or just witnessing it or just knowing someone who was the abuser or is an abuser or something like that. 88% of the professionals surveyed, 82% of children, and 53% of the adults had some kind of experience with abuse, right? Now, in terms of those that report it, majority of the persons who report abuse were the professionals who came across it. 30% were children and 11% were adults. Now, although majority of the respondents were aware of the different forms of abuse, had experienced it in some way, shape, or form, less than that were reporting it. And what the survey found was that it was mainly, in terms of why they didn't report, it was a fear of victimization and a lack of confidence in the system. So they are fearful that if they report, someone would find out and then there will be some kind of reprisal. They also feared, or not feared, but they didn't have any kind of confidence in the system. So maybe an instance that they probably reported before, or someone that they knew made a report and it didn't turn out how, in their eyes, it didn't turn out how it should have, or how they expected it to, so they don't feel like if they report it, anything will be done. Now, in terms of awareness of the NCR, 98% of the professionals were aware of the NCR, 43% of children, and 40% of adults. Outside of professionals, most people do not turn to the NCR first to report. So most persons in schools, in the medical field, or any field where they encounter children or would be likely to encounter children who endure abuse, they usually know that they are to report to the OCR. Outside, previously, before, especially before the amount of advertisements that are being done now, the promotion of the new line, the 211 reporting line, especially directed to children, most persons weren't aware that the first place they should go to usually is the NCR to make the report. Now, mandatory reporting. The Child Care and Protection Act makes it the duty of every adult to report incidents or suspicious, the Child Care and Protection Act makes it the duty of every adult to report every incident or suspicion indicating that a child has been, is being, or is likely to be ill-treated or abused, abandoned or neglected, or in need of care and protection. Section 6.1 of the CCPA lists prescribed persons who have a duty to identify and report suspected or known child abuse. So the Act speaks to everybody having a responsibility to report incidents of abuse or known incidents of abuse or suspected incidents of abuse, but they speak also very specifically to prescribed persons having that duty, right? Now, prescribed persons are anyone who, by virtue of their employment, has a duty of care towards a child. So that includes physicians, nurses, dentists, or other health or mental health professionals, an administrator of a hospital facility, a school principal, teacher, or any other teaching professional, a social worker or other social service professional, an owner, operator, or employee of a child daycare center or other child care institution, a guidance counselor, or, as I said, any other person who, based on their occupation or employment, has a duty of care towards a child. So it's not limited to those persons that are listed before, but if you work in an institution where one of the functions of that institution is to provide care to a child. So schools, for example, we now have the principal, the teachers, the guidance counselors as children who, as persons, sorry, who are directly responsible or have a direct duty of care to a child. But other individuals who work in the schools, the administrator, the secretary, if there is one, the person in the lunch lady, or the security guard, or the janitor, because they work in a school, they by default become prescribed persons. Duties of a prescribed person's employer, right? Now, every entity that provides educational, counseling, healthcare services, or care services to any child, and employs any prescribed person in the provision of these services, they shall make copies of the prescribed reporting forms together with such guidelines as are issued by the registrar, and a copy of the act and the regulations. Adopt procedures to ensure the submission of reports by the prescribed person, and designate one or more of its employees to monitor and ensure compliance. So this is just basically saying that whoever is in charge, the person responsible for the school, the hospital, the health facility, or whatever it is, a daycare center, this is just saying that they should have something in place to ensure that should the need arise, there is a process in place to make a report to the registry, right? So we have prescribed reporting forms that are available electronically. Terrence Richards raised his hand. Miss Richards or Mr. Richards, you have a question? I saw that a Richards raised their hand. All right, I'll just continue. Okay. Okay, thank you. Right, so it's basically anything. So it's basically a process that should be in place to ensure that reports are made to the registry in a timely manner, right? So the reporting forms are available, physical copies or electronic copies, right? And if it is that you want to designate a specific person who would do up the forms, the information is passed to them, they do up the forms, they send them out either electronic or any other means, then that is done to ensure that assistance is given to that child as quickly as possible. All right, so when to make a report? You are to submit a report to the registry when you know or suspect that a child is being abused or neglected. So you would use your professional training and expertise to make this decision, right? It is not necessary to prove that the abuse is happening. You just have to be reasonably suspicious. It is better to err on the side of wrongful reporting rather than to risk further injury or death of the child. So this is just basic. A lot of persons don't make reports because they are not sure and they don't want to get anybody in problem when something is not even happening. But as it said, it's better to err on the side of caution, right? So if you have a reasonable suspicion, right, that something is happening with that child and some form of intervention is needed, then you can make the report. It is not your responsibility to prove that the child is being abused or neglected or is in need of care and protection. You just have to suspect it, you report it to us, we refer to the persons who would do the investigations and then determine if something is actually happening, right? Do not delay in reporting. If you do not have all the needed information, any additional information can be submitted at a later time. So one thing we do definitely need is a location for the child, right? more likely, if you're calling from a school to report a student there, you have a location, even if you don't have the child's home address, which would be the school. But as much as possible, a location for the child is needed. If you don't know the child's address, the school is sufficient in most instances. The directions are important, but not mandatory, right? If you can provide it, it is always appreciated, right? And as it said, if you don't have all the information, you don't know the child's, you're not sure of the child's name, or you know where the child can be found, you know information about the parents, or you don't know information about the parents. Once that information becomes available to you, you can always call back or make contact again to provide that information to us. Right? How to make a report. You can make a report via call, fax, email, or visit, or in person by visiting any one of our offices across the island, right? We have several contact numbers. So we have a toll-free number, the 888 Protect. We have several landlines. We have 2 listed there. Now the 2 numbers, the Flow and Digicel 822-7031, which is the Flow line. That's a cell number, as is the Digicel number that is listed 878-2882. Text messages can also be sent to these numbers. Please call me if you want a call back. Or the Digicel one is a WhatsApp number. So you can send the information via WhatsApp and we will correspond and process the report from that link, right? You can fax. The fax number is 908-2579. You can send the email, send the report via email, either fill out the reporting form if you have it. You can fill it out, scan it and send it, or fill it out electronically and attach it and send it to us. Or you can put the information in the body of the email, whichever one works for you. The email address is report@childprotection.gov.jm. Ricketts? I'm seeing that Consuelo Ricketts raised their hand.
Bye.
I didn't hear. Was there a question that was asked? I wasn't hearing clearly. Okay. All right. So also, in addition to the numbers that you see listed here, we have a new number that you may or may not have been being promoted, the 211 line. It is free of cost to call that line, to be Lime or Digicel, whichever one you have. You can call and you Consuelo Ricketts is saying she needs to be unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, right. So I have a real situation where I called the CPFSA. I have a situation with a child and tell them I think a child is being abused at my school.
Right.
And they tell me to call, is it 211?
Yes, we have one, yes.
Right, but I'm not getting anywhere there. They took a report. The person was not very helpful, but they finally took a report and I have not heard anything since.
All right, the report that you made, were you listed as the reporter for the matter?
Yes, I was.
All right, when did you make the report?
I made it, I think almost 2 weeks or 2 weeks or more. It's about 2 weeks Yes.
All right, Ms. Ricketts. Miss Robotham has my contact number. I'm going to ask her to pass it to you, and you call me once this is finished, and we can speak specifically about that.
Right. Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. All right. All right, so in reporting child abuse, the information that we need from the reporter is the name, age, the sex and location of the child, the name and addresses of the parents or guardians, contact information as well, telephone numbers as well if you have it, the school that the child attends, the details about the abuse or the concerns that you have. As I said, it doesn't have to be abuse. Children, when we say children in need of care and protection or otherwise in need of care and protection, we are referring to children who may be orphaned, their parents are unfit, they are in need of financial assistance, the parent is unemployed, cannot afford to send the child to school for, right, the child is suicidal or anything like that, right? Details about the abuser, if it's applicable, or the alleged offender, and any other information which can assist in the investigation of the report. As I said, directions if possible, any other locations where the child can be found, any actions that were taken, if any. Right, now according to this section 6(4) of the Child Care and Protection Act, if you know or suspect that a child is being abused and fail to report it to the registry, you may be charged with a fine not exceeding 500,000 or imprisoned for up to 6 months, or both charged and imprisoned. Remember that we say abuse is not only the action, right? Doing some is also the failure to act. So if you become aware of I see a question, Ms. Henry. If you become aware of a child being abused or neglected and you do nothing about it, you do not report it, especially in an instance where that abuse escalates, then there's a possibility that you can be fined, charged, or both of them. Ms. Henry is asking, can a call be made and the person's identity remains unknown? Yes, it can, Ms. Henry. I'm going to go further into that in a few minutes. All right. Now, please note that not all cases reported would result in criminal charges or children being separated from their families. While the possibility exists that this will happen or this may happen, it is not the guarantee in all situations. There are times when persons call and they are demanding that the child be removed. That is not always going to be or the agency's course of action, especially in instances where there is room for, let's call it improvement, right? The child is in a situation. Severe cases, of course, to know that the child can be removed or will be removed. But in instances where the child is not being sent to school or the child is not being properly cared for, where training, where warnings, where there can be improvement on the part of the parent, then action will be taken accordingly. What would be done regarding families which need financial assistance? Well, we have programs that we ourselves have in place to assist persons financially, or if it is a need where is a case where the parent cannot afford to send the child to school, we provide assistance in that regard, the agency itself. We also refer to other agencies that provide the financial assistance, like PATH is one of them, and depending on what the needs are, we often refer persons to the what was it again? The Disabilities Council, right? Because I know they provide financial assistance as well. So we have different programs that provide varying assistance for persons in need of financial assistance. Treatment of false reports. Persons making a report upon which investigation is proven to be false, they cannot be sued if the report was made in good faith, or if they genuinely believe the abuse occurred, right? Earlier, I mentioned reasonable suspicion, right? So if it's not you creating mischief, being vindictive, making a false report, then you cannot be sued, you cannot be charged or anything like that, because you genuinely believed that the abuse was occurring, or that the child, there's a possibility that the child will be abused. However, it is an offense to knowingly make a false report. Reports received by the registry will be treated with the strictest of confidence. So Ms. Henry had asked if persons can remain unknown in making a report, right? So when you contact us to make a report, the officer you speak to will, it can be, the PowerPoint can be shared. I'll speak further to Ms. Morgan or Ms. Robotham. The report received by the registry, as I said, would be treated with the strictest of confidence. So you speak to the officer. Once you give the information, they will explain to you that you have the option to give your name, your contact information to be listed as the reporter. And in that instance, you will be able, that will allow you to follow up with the report, either in instances to receive an update or to give additional information to that specific report that you made, right? You also have the option to be anonymous. So you call, you give the information, and you say you don't want your name on the report in any way, shape, or form. You are listed as anonymous. When you choose that option, you have no connection to the report. Once the call ends, or once that report is taken from you, you have no connection to the report. So you aren't able to say that you're the person that made the report, so you want to follow up, or you call back with additional information. You say you made a report previously and you want to give this additional information. Even if it's just a contact number for the parents, you can't call back and say you're giving that additional information, because as far as we're concerned, as far as our records are concerned, you are not the reporter, right? Note that even when you give your information as the reporter, that is only for the purpose of the registry. The reporter's information is not sent, it is not shared with the investigations unit of the agency, nor is it shared with any or external partners when we refer. That information is not sent, right? The reporter's information is just for the purpose of the registry, so we can monitor who we divulge information to, right? Meaning you call, you make the report, you're listed as a reporter, you want to follow up, you're given a case ID number specific to that report that you made, you are the only person that is able to call the registry and ask for an update on the report that you made, right? Even if someone calls with that ID number, if the information does not match, they cannot get the information, which is why I'm not sure how many of you would have interacted with the registry before, but we emphasize that the process is confidential on our part as well as your part, meaning you don't share the information that you receive from us with anyone, right? Now, barriers to reporting that person sometimes indicate is that they don't have the time, right? And we want to know that reporting doesn't take much time or effort. As I said, we have several avenues you can report from. Once you have the information, the calls don't usually take long. You can send the information via WhatsApp. It's quick and easy. You can email us. right? So the only thing you need to do is just to give us the information. Everything else, we do this. We do it, and any other action to be taken, right? If you're concerned about personal safety in terms of someone finding out that you made a report, as I mentioned before, you do not have to give your name if you do not want to, and even if your name is given, it is not divulged by us, right? And persons sometimes think it's not their responsibility because it's not their child or whatever the reason is that they give. But as we stated, it is everyone's responsibility to protect children, right? And we have come to the end of the discussion. Are there any questions for me? Anything that needs clarifying? Anything you need me to go back over? Yes, no? All right, so I'm going to turn over.
Thank you.
Davis.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hutchinson. Indeed, we have gathered a wealth of knowledge. Indeed. I'm looking in the chat. Any question? I'm also on the YouTube and I'm not seeing any questions. So I believe that your presentation was clear. Yes.
Ms. Sawa is asking, is there a standard form for reporting? Yes, there is a standard form. It can be made available to you. The email address that I provided, report@childprotection.gov.jm. You can send a request to that email asking for the reporting form to be sent to you.
Okay, very good. They're asking, are we getting a certificate for this session?
I would not be able to answer that one.
Yes, you will.
Oh, they are, okay. Miss Henry has her hand up. I'm sorry, who was this?
Pauline is saying excellent presentation, indeed it was. There's a hand raised right here. I'm trying to unmute.
Miss Henry and Miss Howell have their hand up.
So somebody's saying, so basically before reporting to police, the report should be made here first. Is that so, Ms. Hutchinson?
They can make the report to the police. They can make the report to the police and they can make the report to us. There's not necessarily a specific order. One is not right and one is not wrong. So whoever you make the report to, it's fine.
So the comments are coming in. This presentation was clear and precise. Very informative presentation, excellent presentation. At this time, I am going to...
Miss, I'm sorry, someone asked about the name went up, but someone asked about the reporting form being available via website. It can be found, or it should be able to be found on the CPFSA website, childprotection.gov.jm. Or you can just Google CPFSA and it will carry you to the website. You should be able to find the form there. After a report is made, how long does the registry to start investigating? All right, so the registry does not do, I still see in Ms. Henry's handle, the registry does not do the investigation. So the reports to be received are referred daily, right? They are referred daily to the investigations unit and other external entities, as I mentioned, right? I cannot speak, the registry, persons in the registry cannot speak directly to the timeline of the investigations unit, but the referrals go daily. right? And they're usually, based on my experience, handled in a very timely manner for the investigations unit, as I said. Right? I can't speak to the other external agencies. I've seen a raised hand. Special education children not going to school. You can contact the registry about that. You give us the reason, and depends on the reason that they are not going, then assistance is provided accordingly. And Mrs. Davis, I'm seeing a hand raised. I'm not sure. Buchanan.
Yes, I have a question to ask. In the case where a report is made and it is a case where it is taken to court, the person who makes the report, would that person be required to be involved in the court scene based on whatever evidence they would have provided?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It depends on the circumstances. Because in the instance where, all right, for example, if it is that, let's say the reporter is a parent or there are questions about the report being made, because I said that you're required to make a report. If you fail to act, then you can be charged. Now, in that case, they would need to know whether or not you made a report. So if you say to the court or investigating officer or whoever that yes, you did make a report, you can provide the proof in that the number that was provided to you, the tracking number, right? They can ask us to verify whether or not you made a report, if it becomes necessary. But if it's a simple case, if it's a case where the information that was reported is brought up in court, they have no need, as far as I know, to want to know who it is that made the report. Usually when they bring up the information in the court is in terms of the findings of the investigation, not necessarily who made the report. I hope that answered your question.
All right, I'm not seeing any other question in the chat. I'm about to place the evaluation form in the chat. Please go ahead and click on the evaluation form so that we know what you think, and we just need your feedback in order to ensure that we provide quality services for our customers. All right.
All right, Ms. Ricketts, remember to speak to Ms. Morgan or Ms. Robotham about contacting me about the question that you asked about the report that you made. All right, thank you all for having me and enjoy the rest of the day.
Right, so Ms. Hutchinson, we just want to tell you thanks for taking time out to be on this platform with us this afternoon. Indeed, we are leaving this platform with a wealth of knowledge. We were reminded of the different abuse, different types of abuse, the method in which to report it, the numbers, the email addresses, and we are now feeling much better, you know, even if we just suspect an abuse, we know exactly what to do. So we have learned, and we're going to go back to our institutions, and we are going to ensure that what we have learned, we actually use it, you know, because we are the voices of our children. And so we have to look out for them. We have to protect them in the best possible ways that we can. Ms. Hutchinson, thank you again for coming. Of course, you have seen it in the chat. Your presentation was clear, precise, and we have learned. Thank you again for coming.
All right, just before, Ms. Dobson is asking if the family cannot afford it, will the support be given instead of saying it is neglect? Yes, so if it's a case, as I mentioned, other than the abuses, the sexual, physical, emotional, and the neglect, we have children who are otherwise in need of care and protection, and someone in that instance would fall under that category. They're not attending school, but it's not as a result of, it's not as a cause of neglect. Intervention is still provided. So as I said, the parent is financially unable to send the child to school, be it due to unemployment or underemployment or such. We provide the assistance same way. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchinson. Please remember to click on the link in the chat. We need to know what you are thinking. We need to have your feedback. All right, so Ms. Hutchinson, thank you again so much. Indeed, it was a privilege to have you here with us this afternoon.
All right, thank you.
All right, so thank you all for coming this afternoon. Indeed, we could not have done it without you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I am Andrea Toller Davis, Senior Inspector of Region 5. Do have yourself a wonderful rest of the afternoon. God bless you.